No one chooses addiction. It's a complex health condition. And when people have other health conditions, we show up, we help out. Addiction is no different. Make the connection, have the conversation, stop the stigma.
Quite well. I feel like we should start with the tweet that you posted Sunday now. The past 2 months have been very hard for me. It has mentally and emotionally destroyed me. I feel broken. I am done hiding. I guess the done hiding part brings you to this interview and other interviews that you have done, but take on the first part there.
Yeah. The last 2 months has been extremely difficult, not only for me, but for my family. I'm sure everybody can empathize that when somebody in your family or somebody close to you is going through something that is pretty difficult, like you empathize with them and you want to support them. And so for me, it's already tough enough to have a mental illness. And now to be dealing with the last 2 months and some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes, it's been very difficult, whether it's going out for dinner, whether it's talking with my attorney. It kind of seems that I can't really get away from what's been going on. And so I just kind of said enough is enough. I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm going to stand up and kind of go public with all of this so that it isn't uncomfortable for me to just go out for dinner with my family anymore.
Yeah, I was going to ask, it's an extraordinary step, a human rights complaint. What brought you to this mechanism?
Yeah, there are a few things. I think for me, and you guys have done a great job covering all of it, but there's a lot of toxic hockey culture that still goes on. And I think we all want it to change. And I was told a very, very long time ago when I was just a kid that sometimes it's going to take your sacrifice to make something better for somebody else. So for me, I felt like if I didn't file this complaint and I didn't go public, all I was doing was upholding that toxic hockey culture. And that's not something I'm interested in doing. I would like to see a game that we all love be more welcoming to people that are people of color, that are LGBTQ+, that are disabled, whether that's mentally or physically. And the only way to do that is to speak up against this kind of behavior.
Do you think you ever were given, were you ever comfortable in the position in the organization? Were you ever feeling like, okay, I've got my feet underneath me here, or did this start from the start for you, and were you always sort of uneasy about where you were?
No, actually, I actually felt really good about working with the Canucks. That's why I chose the Canucks. And Jim Rutherford was a huge part of that. And I mean, I still have a lot of respect for him. I've nothing against him whatsoever. And so for me, I would say that Aiden Fox, I don't have a bad word to say about him either. The department that he's building and the environment that he fosters actually made me feel really comfortable. And it was akin to how comfortable I felt working at the bank, which is, in my mind, probably the best place I've ever worked. And it really kind of started to go awry, I would say. There was an incident kind of in March, and then we kind of moved past that. And then it really kind of started to go awry in the summer. That's really when I felt like some things were off with some people, and that's kind of when I started to be a little bit more careful.
What was the trigger point there, do you think? What do you think triggered that in the summer?
I think it was the fact that Jim and Bruce decided on my eventual move to the coaching staff. And so that decision was obviously made at the highest levels of the organization. And perhaps didn't include some other people in it. And so I think naturally, and this is not really a knock on anybody, I think naturally when that happens, there could be a perceived kind of threat, I guess. I'm not really sure, but I could understand how that would make some people uncomfortable.
When you say the highest level, you mean Jim or even higher than Jim?
It was Jim. The move to the video staff, those discussions as laid out in the complaint were discussed with Jim. That was something that he and I discussed. And so that was kind of the highest level of the organization in terms of the hockey operations department that you can get to.
What happened in March?
I can't really get into it, but I would say that there was an incident where I brought it to the attention of my superiors, and for the most part, they were supportive, but there was a particular individual that I felt like was not supportive of me in that particular instance. And that was sort of when I said, okay, I need to be careful here.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what you hope to achieve with the human rights complaint.
It's more than anything, public accountability. As everyone has seen in the complaint, I took accountability for a text message that I sent. And I wasn't afraid to do that. I never was. But for me, for the organization to say that they did nothing wrong and they provided me with the resources when I didn't see a doctor until after I had a cardiac episode at the end of September. I think it takes two to have a relationship and it takes two to break a relationship. And I'm not afraid to be accountable for my part in the text message that I sent. But I think that saying some of the things that they said, I think is a misrepresentation of it.
And of course, by text message, we're talking about the text message that you sent to Patrick Johnson after he mentioned to you that he was doing a story about your move to the coaching staff and some of the comments that Boudreau had made that day during preseason. That text message,
he actually
right?
didn't even. Yeah, he didn't. He just texted me what Bruce had said about me, and
right.
I did not even know that Bruce had said those things. So somebody texting me about it was actually the first time I had heard about it.
Right.
I was not warned by Bruce that was going to happen.
Did a straight out lawsuit ever cross your mind? Did you ever think of just suing them for wrongful dismissal rather than the human rights?
I thought about it, but there were some things in my contract that probably should not have been there. Had I had a chance to have a lawyer look over it, given that I was only given 24 hours to sign that contract, those things probably would have been removed, and we probably wouldn't be sitting here today if that had been the case. And so, based on my discussions with Peter, my attorney, I didn't actually, I'll be honest, I wasn't really educated on the ins and outs of the BC Human Rights Code, or really any workplace human rights code, to be honest. And so a human rights complaint never really actually crossed my mind. I didn't know that I was going to be able to go public at all, because they were pressuring me not to. And so when I described what happened to Peter, he immediately said that, no, this is a human rights complaint, and a very big one at that.
So the contracts that employees sign with the Canucks, in your estimation, your lawyer's estimation, are so watertight in terms of NDAs and et cetera, that, any departing employee doesn't have much recourse. Is that what you're suggesting? That's
correct. Yes. There is the BC law is like the Employment Standards Act is pretty tight in Vancouver. Now there have been instances of case law where that has been thrown out. So that is an avenue that I could have chosen to pursue, but I think it's more important. Like, this is not about money. And anybody who knows anything about human rights complaints knows that there's not a lot of money that comes from that. For me, this is about doing the right thing and working to make hockey a more welcoming place. And if that means that I'm sacrificing a career in a front office, then that's something that I can live with.
First of all, for the listeners, Peter is Peter Gall, her attorney, who has represented Mike Gillis against the Vancouver Canucks back in the day. When you say they pressured you not to go public, Rachel, can you expand on that?
Yeah. So obviously, when something like this happens, there's a shroud of secrecy over it, and they don't usually want people speaking publicly about the inner workings of the organization. And obviously I can understand that. It was never my plan to come out and say, hey, this is what this department does and this is what that department does. Obviously I'm never, ever going to do that. But at the same time, they really said, we would prefer that you didn't go public. And in my final meeting with Patrick Alvine and HR, I said flatly to them, I will not sign any document that precludes me from speaking publicly. And that wasn't received very well from what I could gather. And in the subsequent emails between attorneys, there was various ways that they said they didn't want me going public, and that putting pressure on me not to do so. And Peter and I both felt it was important to speak up.
Did they offer you hush money? Did they say, we'll pay you to shut up?
I'm not going to get into the details of those talks just because I can't. But yeah, I would say that the 2 months of discussion and negotiations, I really felt like we were not getting anywhere in terms of anything. And because to me, it's not about money. All I have wanted is public accountability for it.
What's your understanding of the timeline here? Where does it go from here?
So I've been told it could be a very long time. It could be anywhere from like 6 months to 2 years before there's a hearing. It really depends on how they see it. The Canucks have not officially responded to the complaint. As much as a PR statement is a PR statement, that is not an official document. So that they have the obligation to respond to that. And so the timeline there is basically whatever the Human Rights Tribunal decides. We're kind of at their mercy now. And I think Peter made it very clear that I'm not really interested in mediation at this point.
You said that you are okay not working in hockey again. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? You got a lot of your life ahead of you.
Yeah. So I've got a couple different kind of balls in the air right now. And I wanted to be clear. When I say I don't want to work in hockey, I don't want to work in a front office anymore. And right now, I don't believe that it's a safe environment for me to be in. I don't feel welcome in the NHL. And so that's something that I understand. And so I'll probably go back. I'll do my podcast. But to me, I'm looking at other avenues, whether it's the bank or soccer as a sport. That's something that I'm looking into. But yeah, for now, you will not find me in a front office anytime soon. It's not somewhere I want to be.
One of the things I wouldn't mind if you clarify for us, Rachel, this point 27 in the complaint, Emily Castengay, Vancouver Canucks assistant general manager, responded to Ms. Doerrie's explanation of what occurred by saying, quote, "You're not important enough to be cared about," and quote, "No one in the media is your friend." Now, that first statement's a little bit, first statement is pretty heavy. But the second statement, help me out. Like, was she trying to say who and who isn't your friend, or was the implication that no one in media should be your friend if you're working in the front office of the Vancouver Canucks?
Yeah, I would say it's option one.
Okay.
So my response to the "you're not important enough to be cared about" was that I disagreed on a number of levels, and that I came, like, Jim Rutherford hired me out of hockey media. So to think that I would not have friends and pre-existing relationships in hockey media would be, that would be inaccurate to assume. And that was when her reply is, "Nobody in the media is your friend." And I wholly disagree with that, because I don't think anybody in hockey media is going to sit here and say that they don't talk to anybody in a front office. And I certainly, I'm friends enough with hockey media that a lot of these people are going to be, like, at my wedding. Like, those are the types of relationships I have with those people. And so if you're going to sit here and say that no one in the media is your friend, I'm going to tell you that that's inaccurate.
Is this emblematic of how the Canucks front office works? Like, do you believe this is an isolated situation with you, or do you think there are broader trends and modus operandi here with the Canucks in their front office?
I don't think it's fair to characterize everybody in the front office with the same brush. Because what I will say is Cami Granato was nothing but completely supportive of me. And even though I wasn't directly reporting to her, every single conversation I had with her, and every time I interacted with her, she was just so very kind and really somebody that I wanted to be around. The same can be said for Ryan Johnson and Derek Clancy. Even while all of this was going on, both of them, they never treated me any differently. And so I don't think it's fair to say that it's indicative of the entire organization. But what I will say is, since I have spoken up publicly, I would need more than two hands to count the number of former or current Canucks employees that have reached out to me to say that something similar has happened to them. And so those are their stories to tell. And it's not something I was expecting, but my DMs on Twitter have contained that, among many other things.
One name I haven't heard a ton, and I didn't read all 62 or 67 points with a fine-tooth comb, but Patrick Allvin's name doesn't seem to come up much. Did you just not have much interaction with Patrick Allvin?
Patrick is not named in the final iteration of the complaint. There was consideration there, but what I felt was that Patrick wasn't involved in all of the conversations, and he was only involved in that final termination meeting. And so they were like, Patrick never said anything to me that was discriminatory or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I also wasn't given the chance to tell my side of what happened. So whatever side that they kind of believed and came up with, they never really seemed to want to ask for my side of things. It didn't seem like they were interested in hearing that.
Rachel, we thank you for the time. We're sorry this is the topic that brings us together here, but we thank you for the time. We wish you all the best going forward.
Thanks, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.